Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I thought we'd do a bit of a fun one today. So today we're going to be doing a bit of a theoretical, which is if you only had one 5-star on your account, which 5-star would let you create the two best teams you could possibly make? I thought that'd be kind of fun and kind of an interesting thought experiment. So uh, if when I'm done with mine, if you have any different opinions, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear your reasoning why. We're probably not going to come to a single conclusion. We're probably going to have like two or three that are like, and then you kind of personally have to pick between which ones would give you the two best teams because some of the teams is hard to debate. But anyway, let's start. Let's get the obvious ones out of the way. The healers are a no Kokomi, no Chi-Chi, no Jean. All these characters just don't really open up any teams. There's maybe a reason to consider Jean because she's also second in emo, but we have Sayu now if we really need that, and it's probably better to grab another character that would enable another team. Second thing, let's remove any characters that are heavily dependent on other 5-stars to work. So Ito, Mona, those are the main two. Kind of Kaching too as well. Yeah, that's probably about the only ones that are heavily reliant on other 5-stars. Ito requiring Albedo, Mona really wanting one of the Cryo 5-stars to really do well, and Kaching necessarily needing Kazuha to be good, but is kind of just like the weakest of the 5-star DPSs. So my next thing I'm thinking about here is I'm thinking, okay, are there any characters that are heavily reliant on the insane 4-stars that maybe would affect which teams we could run in a negative way? So essentially, let's put anybody who is heavily reliant on Jingchu or Zhangling, at least here in the maybe tier for now, and then we'll go through one by one and revisit them. So let's put all the characters that would be heavily reliant on either Jingchu or Zhangling. Kind of Raiden, because at C0, all these 5-stars are C0, by the way. So, and 4-stars can be up to C6, that's fine. But Raiden kind of can't really play Raiden Hyper Carry without C2 or C3. You can do it, but also without Kazuha as well, it'd be a little iffy. So, for that reason, I'm going to keep her there. And then let's kind of like go through, I think these three. So I think the Pyros are automatically a little scuffed because not only do they require Jingchu, but they also want Bennett. So they affect Zhangling, who even if they themselves don't want Zhangling could be on the other side. She then wouldn't have Bennett. So I think with the exception of Hu Tao, I think we can calmly say that the 5-stars that require or would heavily want Jingchu, but would also pull Bennett are not really very good. And I think for a similar reason, we could kind of deduce that Raiden probably wouldn't be very good, as really you could only play her in Raiden National, and that doesn't really fix the issue of your second team, as making a national team is the easiest way to, have a good team with only 4-stars. So I think she definitely goes down. I'm going to leave these two here for now where I think about it. Next, let's go through and pick out the supports that kind of like, or the support units, because realistically, they're not going to do an insane job. Like, Zhongli, probably no. Venti, no. We're going to put, because Venti is kind of, he's really good, but he's good with certain units. So Venti would be good if you had Ganyu, if you had Ayaka. I'm not sure if there's any, I don't think there's any 4-stars that have quadratic scaling or anything like that. So there's no like really strong interaction between a 4-star and Venti. Despite him being a good unit, I don't think he really helps you build a second strong team. Without other 5-stars. Albedo, similar reason. He'll be alright with something like Ningguang, but just realistically, having to drop down to using like a Ningguang or a Noel team as your second team, I think we could do better than that, so we're going to keep him there. So we're going to move up to the maybes. Ganyu, Eula, because I believe that there's probably a good chance we can make good teams with these guys and with other teams, so let's put them there. Zhao, I think, is a possibility, but a little too reliant on Zhongli. Kind of super scuffed team, to be honest with you, if you can't run other 5-stars. Or at the very least, if you can't run other 5 stars, it's kind of not that bad, but you would want something like Diona Bennett, Sucrose Zhao, or like Fischl Sucrose Bennett. So I don't think pulling Bennett for Zhao, despite being good, like good when doing that, is going to let you make other good teams. I think maybe we could put him in, maybe, but he's definitely the most contentious. Ayaka, I think, is more reliant on the other 5 stars in her team than Ganyu is. I think Ganyu could work well with a little more scuffed version of her team, whereas Ayaka, I feel like, wants the Venti / Kazuha more, wants the Mona more, because she is more burst oriented, so she abuses the Omen buff even harder. And Kazuha, despite being arguably like, or being one of, if not, second, first, third, whatever, one of the best units in the game, I don't think he as well is very good if you're talking about only having a single 5-star, because really, what team are you going to make with him? So I think I'm going to put him here too. So I think these are definitely all the no's. I think maybe the only person that you could possibly move out is at hyper investments. Maybe you could make a Raiden hyper carry without Kazuha work. But I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. So let's go through these guys and kind of think about what teams that they could let you run, and then move up or down some of them. So let's start with Zhao. So if we have Zhao, the team we would probably run with him is Zhao, Sucrose, and then 2 Flex. Now, what other team could we make that doesn't need Sucrose? Most likely we'd end up making some sort of national team with Zhangling, Bennett, Jingcho, and then maybe throw it old school and put Chongyun in there. And then who else do we have for Zhao at that point? We have like Diona Fischl. That's not bad, but that's definitely on the weaker side. So I think I'm going to put him down here. I think he's probably definitely the weakest of these, just thinking about it in my head. So let's think about Eula. Now you can make with Eula, you could make a meta Eula comp, Eula, Fischl, Beidou, Diona. That'd be a very strong comp. Or, or Eula, Fischl, Rosaria, Diona, out of just 5-stars, and still not touch a single unit that's part of the national team. So you could still run a full Sucrose national team on the other side. So I think, at least for now, she's one of the ones that definitely is a contender for being the best single 5-star on an account. Next, let's look at Ganyu. So what would you run with Ganyu? So you have a couple. So there's 2 real ways to play her. You could play Ganyu Freeze or Ganyu Melt. So Ganyu Freeze would require you to either run like some super scuffed Barbara, which maybe could work if you give her Thrilling Tales to snapshot onto Ganyu's ult, or you'd have to run Ganyu on a Vaporized team with like Zhangling Bennett, and then maybe and then an emo ideally, probably not Sucrose, because the second team you would probably have to make is Taser at that point. So Taser would be Beidou, Fischl, Jingchu, Sucrose. So maybe you probably would end up putting maybe Toma on her side, or maybe Rosaria. So that's not bad. Let's put that up there. That's a possibility. So the options there. I don't think Freeze would work as well. Freeze would require you to use a scuffed, maybe like Freeze would require you to use a scuffed, an emo probably. You'd probably have to use what's her face, Sayu, to keep Sucrose for your Zhangling team on the other side. But you probably could make it work. Or you could probably run, like, if you run her and Freeze, you could probably then run Zhangling and Melt. That probably wouldn't be too awful either. If you had, Ganyu, Jingcho, Sucrose, Diona, Diona, and the other side was Zhangling, Bennett, Rosaria, Kaya. So I think she's a possible option. I definitely think while I think the Ganyu team itself would be better than the Eula team, I think the fact that Eula would allow you to run a pure national team, as well as her meta team. I'm kind of leaning towards this, but I think there's definitely an argument to be made that possibly the Zhangling Melt plus slightly scuffed Freeze would be fine, or the Ganyu Melt plus Taser could be fine. So next, let's look at Hu Tao. Hu Tao, similar thing. You could run a more or less meta Hu Tao team with Hu Tao, Jingqiu, Sucrose, Toma, and you could run a Zhangling Melt on the other side. So Zhangling, Bennett, Rosaria, Kaya. So I think definitely there's an argument that Hu Tao could be here, as she allows you to still use. Essentially, is what this coming down to is which people still lets you use Zhangling for your other team, or which people maybe let you run Taser. Taser's a good comp and is certainly a meta comp, but is a little bit more of a harder comp to play. So I think personally, I would prefer to have access to a national comp over a Taser comp, especially since the Taser comp doesn't have a healer on it. But a national comp can run a healer, which just makes it more practical. Even if, like, realistically, yes, you can play around not having a healer. It just makes it more practical if you're talking about over the course of playing the game for a couple years, just having the healer be slightly nicer. So I think Ganyu probably the lowest of these right now. So let's look at Child next. So what would Child let you do? Child lets you uncouple Jingqiu from Zhangling. So this means that you could have something like you could have Child meta plus Taser, although you would have to use Sayu for that Child team, or you could run Child Taser plus a Zhangling team, but you wouldn't have Bennett. So I think I'm going to leave him here in the maybe, because despite the fact that he's really good and some of those teams are all right, I think the advantage is that with these three, you don't necessarily have to change any of the teams meta composition wise, whereas you would have to make at least one substitution here in order to make them work properly without access to other 5 stars, mainly with the problems of doubling up on an emo or just Bennett issues of wanting Bennett on both sides of the Abyss. So these are kind of the three that we ended up with. Of these three, if I had to make a decision, I'm kind of tempted to say it's hard to say, but I think any of these three lets you essentially run them with a very solid team, as well as essentially one meta team on one side and one meta team on the other. Essentially, if you have just these and then 4 stars, I think if I had to pick, I would kind of be leaning towards Eula, just because this team and this team kind of makes you double pyro. Actually, I guess Ganyu doesn't either. So my one concern with Hu Tao is that it essentially means you have 2 teams that both rely on pyro damage, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if there's ever content or in the Abyss there's a mob that is immune to pyro damage, Hu Tao gets hurt quite a bit from that. The Hu Tao setup would get hurt quite a bit from that, whereas Eula, you could put Eula on one side to be physical, or you could put Ganyu Freeze on one side to be that. So I think for that reason, I'm actually going to drop Hu Tao down here. So this is kind of what we come up with. I actually think, possibly Eula could be better, but the fact that you could technically get 3 meta teams out of just Ganyu makes me almost want to put her. But I do think that Eula not being weak to, giving you a character that's not weak to any elemental resistance, and still letting you run a perfect national team on the other side, I think maybe she could be a little better. I'm not saying she's a better character, but I'm thinking if you only had one 5-star, I definitely think one of these two is great. This allows you to run 2 meta teams. These 2 would also allow you to run 2 meta teams with a little bit of downside. Hu Tao being that your account's weak to anything that's immune to pyro damage, and Child being that you have to run at least one unit that's a little weird in one of your comps, but it's definitely doable. All these guys I think are pretty easy no's. So thanks for watching. If you have any other opinions, or if you want to chime in on whether you think the Eula or the Ganyu would be better, I'd love to hear it. And I hope you have a great day.